Syria, where army defectors have reportedly attacked a major military installation near the capital. It's the highest profile strike on loyalist forces since anti-government unrest started in March. The Free Syrian Army, fighting against the rule of President Bashar al-Assad, now claims to number more than 25,000. This as the Arab League confirms Syria's suspension, and France has recalled its ambassador from Damascus. Government supporters are reportedly storming the Moroccan, Qatari, and Emirati embassies in Damascus in response to this. For more on all this and some perspective, we're joined by Beirut-based researcher Sarah Marasek from Syracuse University. Good to have you with us. So, army defectors have apparently struck near the heart of the Assad regime. If the armed opposition really does number in the thousands, 25,000 possibly, do you think it could lead to an all-out civil war?
Yes, indeed. Thank you for having me, first of all. And I think these are very troubling developments that we've been hearing this week. Of course, we've been worried about this all along, but definitely with more arms going into the protesters and the demonstrators and those who are not peaceful demonstrators and protesters and who are trying to stoke violent unrest. These are very troubling new developments this week. And of course, there are dangers that this could become a civil war, especially with the way the regional situation is evolving and the way neighboring countries are framing the situation, and the way the West is continuing to put pressure on neighboring countries to pressure Syria. So we are definitely in a very troubling spot right now.
Well, we have the West and the Arab League saying Damascus is cracking down on peaceful demonstrations, and certainly we have seen these demonstrations going on for months now, and many of the demonstrators have apparently been killed. But if the government truly is under an attack from what is now an organized opposition and it's armed, what options does the government have?
Well, this is the true predicament, because if the Arab League is pressing for the Syrian government to withdraw its forces, and the Syrian government and the military and the intelligence services are being attacked quite violently and by well-armed people, then there's not really much chance for the Syrian government to take the troops from the streets, to remove the tanks. Really, right now, the Arab League should be putting pressure not only on the Syrian government, but also on the protesters. And if they're going to require the Syrian government to enter into dialogue, then certainly the protesters should stop the violence and also enter into a dialogue with the government. So right now, really, the pressure is being directed only to one side, and the conflict is two-sided. And so we really need to start focusing on a de-escalation of the opposition in Syria if a civil war is to be averted. And at this point, the way the opposition is framing things, they're not thinking about how many people are still in the country and who support President Assad. And this is really potentially destructive, because they could pretend that they're a popular movement. And of course, they have a lot of support, but they also have a lot of opposition in Syria. People come into the streets by the tens of thousands to protest for the government and for President Assad. And right now, the opposition isn't considering that fact. They're not thinking about the fact that democracy means that they're going to have to dialogue with all Syrians, including those people who support President Assad.
Now, the Arab League claims Damascus isn't implementing the peace deal that it brokered earlier in the month. What exactly are they expecting from President Assad next?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think today there was a promising development with the release of more than 1,000 political prisoners. Of course, there are many other political prisoners that still need to be released, but this is, a sign that Assad he's still concerned about what his neighbors think, and he's still under some sort of willingness to negotiate and to work with not only the Arab League, but potentially with opposition activists. If he lets them free, then certainly he's going to be willing to talk to them as well. I'm not sure if the Arab League has enough patience for this to happen in a realistic way, and they're making demands that are very difficult to immediately put into place. But of course, if they give the government a little bit more time, then there will be a chance for positive developments to take place.
We're seeing foreign sanctions being stepped up against the Assad regime. How do you think that they're going to affect the people, the Syrians themselves?
I think sanctions are always very destructive to the people. I mean, we saw this in Iraq during the 1990s. We see it in Iran now. The sanctions may be a way for the powerful Western countries to exert some sort of pressure over Syrian government, but really the people are the ones who suffer by not being able to have medicines, by not being able to have certain technologies that may be required to save lives. And so, of course, the Syrian people are going to be the ones who suffer. And I just don't really understand why the increased sanctions would be put on the table, considering the situation is very sort of immediate, and so sanctions are a long-term solution that are not necessarily. I don't find them effective at all, but I mean, history will tell us over time whether or not they're effective. They weren't in Iraq and they're not in Iran, so we'll see.
And just to wrap up, if Syria does descend into a full-scale civil war, do you think the international community should step in?
This is such a difficult question. I don't think the international community should step in. I think that as undemocratic and problematic as the Arab League is, it is a better solution to have regional countries deal with the problem. But of course, the real issue is that if conflict erupts in Syria, then certainly Iraq and Lebanon will be brought in, and potentially even Jordan. And I think that these are developments that are just right now too dangerous to consider. It's useless to think about what may happen when right now we have a chance to stop it from happening, really.
All right, Sarah Marasek from Syracuse University, good to have you with us.